Splash Mountain is about to reopen as Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and there seems to be some confusion surrounding why Splash Mountain had to go. So to better understand the future, let's take a look at some Disney history and find out how this ride came to be, including the curious choice to choose characters from a movie that Disney had already admitted was too racist to release. I'm Clover with Cloverloop. Let's take a closer look at Splash Mountain's backstory. Before we get started, let's take a quick look at the different versions of Splash Mountain at Disney parks around the world. The original opened on July 17, 1989 at Disneyland in California, and at the same time, Bear Country was renamed Critter Country to fit the new theme of the area. Other versions of Splash Mountain opened at the Magic Kingdom in Florida and at Tokyo Disneyland, one day apart from one another, in October of 1992. There was even a version planned for Disneyland Paris, but it was later canceled because of budget and also the realization that the cold weather in France would not mix well with a water ride. Okay, now that we've got some information on the different versions of Splash Mountain, let's hop into the backstory of this iconic ride. On an early test ride with Imagineers and Disney execs on board, everybody got drenched from head to toe. The ride vehicle logs had to be reconfigured for months to solve the problem before the ride could reopen. Imagineer and Splash Mountain's executive producer Tony Baxter was on that early, overly splashy ride. He said, "The tradition of Disney is that nobody is ruled out. It's a negative if somebody says, 'You guys go, I don't want to get all wet.'" The ride's original name was Zippity River Run, named after the Oscar-winning song Zippity Doo-Dah from the 1946 Disney film Song of the South. This is the movie, specifically the animated portions of this movie that Splash Mountain is based on. Now, the 80s were a time of cutbacks for Disney parks, and Disney wanted an anchor for Bear Country, which was renamed Critter Country later. They couldn't spend a lot of money, so it made sense to look at an existing Disney film. But I do wonder why, because Disney has never released Song in the South on any form of video in the US, and it's easy to see why. Song of the South is racially insensitive, to say the very least. Thankfully, Disney is finally confronting their racist and problematic past by making story changes like the auction scene in Pirates of the Caribbean. And they're taking a big step in the right direction by converting Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Have you ever paid close attention to the story being told on Splash Mountain? It goes something like this. Brer Rabbit leaves home in search of adventure. Brer Fox and Brer Bear do everything they can to stop him, but they're constantly outwitted by Brer Rabbit. While looking for his laughing place, Brer Rabbit traps Brer Fox and Brer Bear in a cave of bees. Brer Rabbit is finally caught and taken to Brer Fox's home on Chickapin Hill, which is at the very tippy top of Splash Mountain. To escape being roasted alive, Brer Rabbit tricks Brer Fox into throwing him in the briar patch, which, of course, is exactly where he was born and raised, and this is where we all plunge down the hill. Brer Rabbit's unharmed, and we see Brer Bear and Brer Fox being chased by Brer Gator. Brer Rabbit's victory is celebrated by his friends on the showboat, which, by the way, is my favorite part of the ride. Now, speaking of the showboat, Disneyland's America Sings attraction was being dismantled at the same time that Splash Mountain was being built. So to save money, most of the animatronic characters from America Sings were moved to Splash Mountain. And you can see a very large concentration of those audio animatronics here in that showboat scene. By the way, the paddle wheel boat for this scene is called the Zippity Lady. As for the fate of some of the other animatronics from America Sings, two of the long-necked geese became droids in the line for Star Tours, and the Rock and Roll Stork was repurposed to train new animatronic programmers. When Splash Mountain was being planned, then CEO Michael Eisner requested that the attraction promote the recently released Disney film Splash. Splash is this mermaid movie directed by Ron Howard and starring Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah. Splash was the first film to be released under Disney's new Touchstone Pictures, created to produce films for a more adult, grown-up audience. The idea was mostly scrapped, but the splash part stuck, and it did fit the mountain theme at Disneyland, along with Space Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain, and the Matterhorn, which doesn't have mountain in its name, but is obviously a mountain. When guests used to enter the now extinct bear country at Disneyland, they were greeted by the snores of the perpetually hibernating Rufus the Sleeping Bear. When the construction of Splash Mountain took over Rufus's cave, Imagineers found a new home for Rufus on Splash Mountain. So you can listen for a snoring Brer Bear right before the first waterfall, which is called Slip and Falls on the Disneyland version of the ride. Rufus also found a new home in the Christmas and Vacation Hoedown versions of the Country Bear Jamboree, before the attraction was eventually closed. He was a stagehand who was never actually seen on stage, but he could be heard breathing heavily and climbing the stairs between scenes. This migrating snore actually has a longer history. The snore itself was originally recorded for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the movie, but it was never used. Then it was finally used in the Rainbow Ridge scene from Disneyland's Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland. Then it was used for Rufus, then finally moved to Splash Mountain, which makes it one of the oldest recorded sounds at Disneyland. At the Magic Kingdom version of Splash Mountain, look at the lamps in the loading area. They occasionally flash. It's a communication system for the cast members who run the ride, so they know when it's safe to start. When the lamps blink, the cast members check to see that everybody is safely seated, and if so, they push a button and the lamps stay lit. Then another cast member double checks to make sure that all the guests are safely seated. Then they press another button, and then the logs go on their way to start the ride. And this process is repeated every 11 or 12 seconds. Do they do this at the other versions of Splash Mountain? Have you ever seen the flashing lanterns on other rides? If so, let me know in the comments. In July of 1989, the Disney Channel air Ernest Goes to Splash Mountain. It starts with a news bulletin. Ernest is the very first person to ever ride Splash Mountain. So he goes to Vern's Daredevil training facility. He finally rides Splash Mountain as an eager crowd awaits. For 80s kids like me, this is like powerful nostalgia because Ernest was for some reason everywhere in the 80s. And speaking of funny videos, it's the Splash Mountain rap. Check out the baggy clothes and the mullets. It's really amazing. When Splash Mountain first opened at Disneyland, the Zip-a-Dee Lady, which is the showboat at the end of the ride, was the largest animated prop ever built for a theme park. At Disneyland, the prop is 50 feet wide and 30 feet high. The Splash Mountain at Magic Kingdom has a slightly smaller one that's 36 feet wide and 22 feet high. I'm not sure how big the one at Tokyo Disneyland is, but if you know, will you leave me a comment and let me know? Splash Mountain is covered with sensors. According to a former Walt Disney World cast member who used to work there, if anybody stands up or gets out of a log, it'll trigger a sensor that sets off an alarm in the tower. The tower's the command center for the whole ride. The tower operator will then halt the ride and turn on all the lights inside the ride and inside the staircases. The lights also get brighter in line, so if you're waiting in line for Splash Mountain and the lights get brighter, just know that maybe you'll be waiting a little bit longer. Inside Splash Mountain, there are 3 staircases and 15 doors, and if you're ever on the ride when it gets evacuated, you'll get to see behind the scenes. Do you want to know even more about the controversy surrounding the re-theme of Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure? We made another video that takes a much deeper dive into the racist origins of Splash Mountain. I'm Clover, and I'll see you in the next video.